November is Native American Heritage Month, so let's kick it off by talking about an Indigenous sculptor who led an expansively queer life as a sideshow performer, Nabor Feliz. Welcome back to Yesterqueers. My name's Amanda, and I'm a public historian of queer history. We know tantalizingly few details about Feliz's life, and only one person has done a deep dive into it, a scholar of Seneca descent named Dr. Michelle Reheja, who discovered his papers at the Autry Museum archive while she was researching something else. You'd be surprised how many historical figures are discovered accidentally, while someone is deep in an archive looking for something unrelated. But what details we do know sketch the outline of a life lived in stark contrast to the stereotypes about the lives of Indigenous people and queer people at the start of the 20th century. Nabor Feliz was a stage name, and we don't know for certain what his birth name was. His draft card lists a single name that I believe is pronounced Netzawalt, which he translated as Happy Fox. His grave lists his name as Felix Netzawalt, and he was billed under a variety of names, including Nabor Feliz, Felix Nabor, Zor Feliz, and Falez de Pueblo. We also don't know what nation Feliz was a member of. He was identified in newspaper articles and circus advertisements mostly as Pueblo, but occasionally as Navajo. But Reheja couldn't find him on any of the tribal enrollment lists that she searched. Her best guess is that he was either descended from the Pecos Pueblo or, since Feliz's first language seems to have been Spanish, from an indigenous Mexican family. What we do know is that he was born August 22nd, 1877 in Utah, and that he got his start probably as a teenager playing an Indian in one of the popular Wild West shows that toured the country. His show was apparently shut down by an Indian agent after that agent discovered that all of the indigenous performers were only being paid in beans. By the 1920s, he was performing in sideshows as a lightning sculptor. Feliz would sculpt anything that audience members asked for and then give it to them as a souvenir. His specialties seem to have been animals, busts of famous people, and reproductions of classic Greek sculptures. Feliz spent almost 50 years touring as a sideshow attraction, from the early 1920s until about 1971, with some of the biggest circus companies in the country, including Barnum and Bailey. He crisscrossed the United States, including Hawaii, and he traveled to Canada, India, and China. According to Reheja, while on tour, they often cruised the beaches, boardwalks, and parks of the cities they visited, looking to meet men for conversation, friendship, intellectual camaraderie, and presumably, sex. On the night of August 3rd, 1926, Feliz was arrested in Los Angeles for lewd and dissolute conduct after being caught under the Sunset Pier in Venice with a young man named George Sanders. According to the police report, Feliz defended his actions by saying, quote, "He is a morphodite and needs a man and wanted to know what he was to do." Morphodite is a very old bit of derogatory slang that could mean intersex, it could mean a gay man, and it could mean crossdresser or genderqueer, depending on the context. It's unclear which definition Feliz was using to describe himself, but he refused to be pathologized, and to quote Reheja again, Feliz didn't fit into the restrictive gender binary classification of the law, and thus they imagine they might not be subject to its interpolation. As well, their self-identification makes natural their desire and articulates a call for decriminalizing sex between two consenting adults. Interestingly, it does not appear that Feliz was convicted, fined, or jailed after this arrest. The story of Nabor Feliz's life is certainly one of a queer person and an indigenous person living on the margins. But as far as we can tell, it is not a story of overwhelming trauma or struggle. First of all, Feliz had plenty of money. Working as a sideshow sculptor wasn't terribly lucrative, so either he managed his money extraordinarily well, or he had another stream of income, because he bought several houses over the course of his life. In the 1920s, he had enough cash that he was financially supporting several other people, including a Buffalo soldier stationed in Wyoming, a Sherman Indian School student in Riverside, California, an itinerant laborer, and the family of his best friend, James Leland, who lived in Los Angeles. James Leland's mother, by the way, once sent Feliz a letter outlining her plans for adding a room onto their house so that Feliz could live with the Leland family during his off-season. And Leland's father once sent Feliz a letter that talked about how glad he was that Feliz and his son were, quote, such good friends. Feliz was also an avid reader who was curious about every part of the world. An autodidact with an eidetic memory, Feliz spoke at least 5 languages: Spanish, English, German, Italian, and French, and he was a member of several chapters of the Theosophical Society. He spent his life traveling, exploring, and making connections all over the world. One of the people that Dr. Reheja interviewed for her article remembered Feliz as, without question, one of the most fascinating people I have ever met. Nabor Feliz retired to Tampa, Florida, where he could stay connected to the circus community. He died on December 13th, 1972, at the age of 95. He's buried in the Showman's Rest Cemetery in Tampa. That's it for today. As always, more information, including sources and further reading, is available in the usual place.